Welcome back to Streamline Investigations. I'm going to move into part 2, and I came across this brilliant YouTuber, Mary Hallberg, connected to another famous case, obviously the Maddie McCann case, and we're talking about connections in the last video as well of the disappearance of Joana Cipriano in Portugal. Let's get straight into this. What I'm going to do, I'm going to comment on half of this video, and then I will put this out tomorrow, and then on the 12th the last piece will be out as well. Okay, so you get the whole video, but it's going to be in 2 parts. Thank you.
Just wanted to make a couple of points before we get into this case. One, this case takes place in Portugal, and a lot of the sources I used had to be translated from Portuguese using basic online translation tools. If I get something wrong or accidentally used an unreliable source, please let me know so I can make an update. 2, this case contains references to child abuse, specifically child sexual abuse. If this is something that makes you uncomfortable, I won't be offended if you click off now. If you're still here, thanks for watching and enjoy the video. Missing persons cases are always sad, especially those involving children. But this case is one of the more bizarre ones I've ever heard. It happened back in 2004 in Portugal, and although it's technically solved, the girl's body was never found, and many questions still remain. This is the case of Joana Cipriano. Joana Isabel Cipriano was born around 1996, the result of a relationship that lasted just 4 months. She had at least 5 siblings and half-siblings, and most of them lived with other relatives. From everything I can tell, Joana was close with her mother but rarely saw her father. When Joana was 3, her mother began a relationship with a man named Leandro Silva. Some sources referred to Leandro Silva as Joana's stepfather, but others say he and Joana's mother, Lenore, never married. It's possible that they weren't married, but these sources just referred to him as Joana's stepfather because it was easier to say. Regardless, Leandro Silva would be in Joana's life until her disappearance. Growing up, Joana was described as gentle, friendly, and a good student, but teachers at her school noticed something was off. They said Joana had too many adult responsibilities at home and was given far more chores than what a child her age should have had. They also said that she would cry sometimes at school but was very closed off and would never really tell anybody what was going on. Other teachers said Joana never showed any signs that things were bad at home. Sometime in 2004, a formal complaint was filed against Joana's family due to concern for the now 8-year-old's welfare. School officials were concerned about her subnutrition and all of the work she had to do around the house. As far as I could find, no action was ever taken. There is conflicting information about Joana's living situation at the time of her disappearance. I've seen some people say she lived with her grandmother, but most sources seem to say she lived with her mother, stepfather, and 2 younger siblings. But wherever she actually was living, Joana was last seen alive on the night of Sunday, September 12, 2000.
I just want to say a couple of points. I just wonder whether the school or teacher did go to the home and realised, or go a couple of times and realised that young Joana was doing too much around the house and stuff, and basically giving chores that an adult sort of teenager would have, sort of thing. That's interesting.
2004. Around 8 p.m., Joana headed out to buy milk and 2 cans of tuna. The shop she bought them from was about 500 meters from her home, and she was last publicly seen walking toward the village church about 200 yards from her house. I've seen some people say the milk and tuna was found in the house later, but most sources say it was never found. Joana was reported missing 4 days later, on September 16th. Searches were conducted around the family home in the village of Figueira, in the woods close by, and bodies of water. The search extended as far as Castro Marim, where Joana's grandparents lived. The case gained national attention. Joana's mother, Lenore Cipriano, distributed posters and made TV appearances, begging for the safe return of her daughter, who she believed had been abducted. Rumors flew that Joana had been killed or sold, but others looked in a different direction for answers. Before the month was over, residents of Figueira already suspected Lenore and her brother João. They speculated that Joanna had been killed because she took money from Lenore, João, or their mother, Joanna's grandmother. Either Lenore or João had a record of petty theft. Due to translations, I couldn't tell 100% which one. Because of Joanna's home life, a neighbor speculated early on that Lenore might be involved. Another witness said she overheard two men talking near a church shortly after the disappearance. One of them said, "Tell me where you put the girl, or I'll kill you." The other said, "It was in a plastic bag from a supermarket." It's not really clear what it is, but I think we can all make an educated guess. But it wasn't just gossip that made Lenore and João look guilty. Blood splatters were found on the wall of the family home, as well as on the floor, a freezer, a bucket, and a mop stem. Most of the blood was human, but it couldn't be determined if it was Joanna's. Traces of bone, hair fragments, and fibers similar to Joanna's clothes were found in a pig farm over 300...
How can they not? I know it was 2004, basically, at the end of the day, but how can they not know whose blood it was, or wasn't, should I say? That's pretty bizarre, because, I know it was 20 odd years ago, but you would have thought they would have enough decent equipment to find that out, should I say. Do you know what I mean? Forensics and that.
Meters north of Figueira. Other sources say the farm was actually in Figueira. Clothes belonging to João and a plastic bag believed to be used by Lenore were also found, I believe, at the same location. This discovery led to police's most prominent theory, that Joanna had been killed and her body had been fed to pigs. Lenore and João were both questioned in the weeks following Joanna's disappearance. Despite the evidence investigators already had against them, it wasn't long before they got the break they felt they really needed. Confessions. Lenore confessed to murder on September 24th, and João confessed 2 days later. Another source said Lenore confessed on October 13th. One other thing I wanted to bring up was a quote said by João at some point during the case that became very well known. I'm not sure exactly when it was said, but in Portuguese it read, "Eu não lhe fiz mal, só a matei." This roughly translates to, "I didn't hurt her, I only killed her." Lenore and João were arrested and charged, first in relation to Joanna's disappearance and later with first-degree murder. But before they could face trial, the story got even more twisted. In March 2005, photos of Lenore appeared all over newspapers in Portugal. The photos show bruises all over her body, as well as 2 black eyes. Lenore accused 8 members of the Judicial Police, also known as the PJ, of torture. Lenore said she was forced to kneel on glass ashtrays with a bag covering her head and beaten in order to extract a confession. The PJ denied this. They said Lenore's injuries had been inflicted from a suicide attempt in which she tried to throw herself down a flight of stairs. And she wasn't the only alleged victim of this torture. João and another brother of theirs, Nelson, were also reportedly assaulted by the PJ. João's injuries were so bad he had to go to the emergency room. That same month, it was speculated that Lenore might be released due to lack of evidence, but that never happened. Lenore and João's trial began on October 12, 2005. According to the prosecution, Joanna had walked in on her mother and João having sex. She threatened to expose their incestuous relationship to her stepfather, who had been in her life since she was a toddler and who she regarded as a father. Not wanting this to happen, João killed his niece by bashing her head against a wall. Then he dismembered her, kept her body in a freezer for a few days, and drove it out to the pig farm, allowing it to be consumed. The theory that Joanna had been killed after witnessing a sexual encounter between her mother and uncle had been circulating for months, though I've never found any concrete evidence of this incestuous relationship.
It's funny how it was sort of brought up. Was it brought up by another member of family who thought they were, was something going on? But that's really, really strange. Very, very strange story.
In the trial, the jury learned of João's detailed confession to police and how he'd used a mannequin to show how he cut Joanna's body into 3 parts. Neither Lenore or João actually spoke during the trial, but I believe a video of the confession was shown to the jury. Jurors were also told about the forensic evidence that had been found. In November, Lenore and Joao Cipriano were found guilty of first-degree murder and concealment of the body. They were sentenced to 20 and 19 years in prison, respectively. Those sentences were later reduced to 16 years each. After the trial, several Portuguese lawyers spoke out, saying they didn't believe there was enough evidence for a conviction. The jury disagreed, citing forensic evidence as a major part of why they'd found them guilty. The trial also made Portuguese history as the first murder trial in the country that had taken place without a body being found. This case is already crazy enough, but it gets even crazier. Just over 2.5 years after Joana's disappearance, another girl would go missing in Portugal, and this case would make international headlines. Madeline McCann was a 3-year-old British girl who vanished on May 3, 2007. At the time of her disappearance, she was vacationing with her family in Praia de Luz, about 24 kilometers from Figueira, the village where Joana lived. Every source I found said this was equivalent to about 7 miles. All of my calculations said it was actually closer to 14 miles. I'm not sure which one of us is incorrect. Nevertheless, in the years following, there has been plenty of speculation that Joana and Madeline's cases may be connected. There are plenty of similarities in the cases, and not just on the surface. Both involved young girls who went missing. Both girls disappeared from Portuguese towns not too far from each other, and within a 3-year span. In both cases, the parents of the children were suspected, and both investigations share a common and controversial investigator, Goncalo Amaral. I didn't follow Madeline McCann's case all that closely, but I'm sure those of you who did remember Amaral, as he apparently became pretty well known from it. Amaral was criticized in the British press for working short hours, taking long lunches, drinking quite a bit during said lunches, and not following up on most of the tips. His inexperience was also brought up, as he had only investigated 2 child murders in a 26-year career. He was also one of the officers accused of torturing Lenore and Joao Cipriano. In September 2007, Amaral was arrested for falsifying evidence in Joana's case. On October 1st, he was removed from the McCann case and transferred to another city. On October 27, 2008, Amaral and 4 other officers went on trial. It took 8 months for a judge to conclude that Lenore had been attacked in the PJ headquarters, but it couldn't be determined which of the officers accused had actually taken part.
Wow. This case just gets really, really bizarre. It really, really does. And like I said, this Amaral certainly has got a past. And, I didn't know about this because, like I said, trying to falsify evidence and others from the police force, that police force as well, that's so bad.
Amaral was found guilty of giving false evidence and given an 18-month suspended sentence. Another inspector, Antonio Cardoso, was found guilty of forging documents and given a 2-year suspended sentence. After the trial, Amaral was also accused of assaulting Joana's stepfather, Leandro Silva. Amaral allegedly grabbed Leandro by the throat and punched him in the abdomen and face, all the while demanding he tell him where Joana was. Leandro said he wasn't able to work for 5 days after this incident.
I sort of believe it, really, at the end of the day. I think a lot of these cops can be really, really corrupt. I will move on to part 2 another time, people. I'm going to leave it there for now. Let me know what you think. And do you think it could have a connection with the Maddie McCann case, the disappearance of Joana Cipriano? I just don't think the mother, even though the mother was convicted, I just got a feeling at the end of the day she was trying to protect somebody else as well. Let me know what you think, people. Don't forget to subscribe to Streamlined Investigations and follow the channel. Thank you very much. Take care.